Bear with us. Hello, everybody. It is, I think, Steph, is it Friday the 21st? Because I've been so ADHD this week, I'm getting all of my dates mixed up in August. Friday the 21st of August, goodness, summer is rattling through, and we hope you are all well and safe and happy. So lovely to be back and see you all. And actually, I do think we are streaming live to Facebook, which would be brilliant, because there's been not working on occasions, broadcasting to the Facebook group. So I think technically we're doing okay. So this is good. So this week we've been looking at communication, haven't we, Steph?
We have.
Which is a bit of a challenge for many acts with ADHD for many reasons. So I just had a little think of what barriers, personally and other adult ADHDs I know that I have, just with an everyday basic conversation. We can have scenarios whereby we talk too much, which I do a lot. We may get overly excited. We may interrupt. We may forget what we've been told, zone out, get overwhelmed, feel rejected, get angry, maybe fail to read each other's tone, perhaps become overly emotional during a conversation, get bored, go off on a tangent, many tangents from other tangents, and therefore lose our thread from the conversation, or perhaps struggle to find the right words. So that's just in basic conversation before we even get to foundational stuff, emotional stuff like rejection sensitivity, a lack of boundaries, which we've discussed before. So we do have an awful lot to basically discuss. So I've just seen in the chat, is my internet connection stable, Steph, now? Can you see and hear me?
Yeah, it's better now.
Oh yeah, I'm really sorry. I must ring Virgin Media. So that was because I said we don't have any tech problems today. We're streaming live to Facebook. So do I need to repeat anything, Steph, just to be clear of what I said?
No, we heard everything. It was just the picture a bit frozen. I think as well the wind. I don't know what it's like down your neck of the woods, but in London, yeah, pretty windy.
Pretty windy. Let's blame the wind.
Yeah, of course.
Blame the wind. And we blamed the heat the other week, so that's fine. Weather problems rather than tech. So yes, communication problems, technical and maybe ADHD communication problems. So they're just a few of my issues, and then we've been looking at ways to mitigate them. So there's things you can do, is there, before preparing for conversations, so these things are less likely to happen, aren't they?
Yeah, look, it's communication for ADHD is so difficult, right? Yeah, we tend to overly communicate and maybe overshare as well, right? It's really hard to strike the right balance. Balance and ADHD, not really two words that go well together. We strike our own balance. But yeah, so rejection sensitive dysphoria, I think, really plays havoc with us and our ability to communicate. Because, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, but when you're in a conversation, it's very quickly we can get triggered by one comment, right? So you could have all the strategies in the world, which we shared with our members this week, but with this proviso that you can have all the strategies in the world, but because of our RSD, we can get triggered just by not even like a bad comment, but we could perceive it as an attack on ourselves. And then all of a sudden, our ears close, we see red, and all we're doing in that moment is trying to protect ourselves, defend ourselves, or prove them wrong, attack them back. And then, all kind of any outcome, if you actually identified what you were looking for from the conversation in the first place, just completely gets forgotten.
And I think what you're saying is absolutely true. And you do find yourself in those scenarios. And what happens to me particularly is, before you realise that you've been sucked down that path, you're already halfway there and you're already in that conflict situation because you have been triggered. So I think what I try and do is make sure that my tank is as full as possible, that I'm not hungry, I'm not tired. So you would avoid conversations if your basic fundamentals you know, you were feeling particularly anxious, you would avoid that kind of conversation, or make sure that you were hyper aware that you should try and step away from those conversations if you're tired, hungry, you know, overly emotional that day for whatever reason, hormones, whatever. And so that will be preventative. But whilst you're in it, there are kind of ways that you can try and have that split second time to think, so that you can kind of focus on your breathing maybe, or, you know, think about how your body's occupying the space, or do that body scan and go, right, okay, I'm being sucked in, can I just step outside of myself for a minute, so that I've got that thinking time to go, you're feeling anxious, this conversation's going the wrong way, you're getting rejected, you're getting overly emotional. And one trick that I like to do is, because I love David Attenborough, is I like to kind of pretend that he's narrating the situation in my head, and it kind of helps you laugh a bit at it and step outside. You go, oh yes, and Michelle's clearly getting upset, rejected and angry from this particular part of the conversation. That's a terrible David Attenborough impression, by the way. But it really does help me to kind of step outside, forget, you know, to be, you know, it helps you distance yourself so that you can get back to the reason for the conversation. So I don't know, they're just a few of the tricks that I employ. I don't know if your coachees employ any others that would help them in that moment, because that's really hard, isn't it, when you're in that situation, you think, I need to stop this now and control this conversation and control myself a bit better than I am doing.
Yeah, this is the really difficult bit, isn't it? And it is that RSD. And what you've said, precisely that, you really got to create that space, whichever way you can. And yeah, David Attenborough or otherwise, it could be that, like I know that with meditation, for instance, if you're in a regular practice of meditation, it's a great way of being able to create space when you need it, putting yourself kind of in that bubble, so that when comments come flying your way that you might not be very happy with, you know, they don't hit you, right? They kind of get deflected off the bubble. And certainly when you can do that, when you've got that space, right, it gives the person as well, who might happen to be another ADHD, right? It gives that person, basically, it's like holding up a mirror to that person, right? Because we often don't do that, because we're right back at them. We're just like in the battle. Whereas if you don't respond or react, or you just kind of, it's like they're left with themselves to kind of deal with, and they start actually hearing themselves. And you might find that the other person might kind of take a step back and hang on, because we often don't give them the chance to hear themselves, right? Because we're right back at them. And then it all becomes, you know, then we're in it, and, you know, now we're kind of also contributing to the downfall of the conversation. So if you just create that space for yourself to not react, but also long enough to hold the mirror up, and, you know, it can really help that person see that, hang on, maybe they weren't being quite reasonable. Maybe they'll actually apologize. Like, it does happen. Like, test this out. They might apologize, and then you've got a chance to create that conversation, a constructive one again. So I found that can be quite effective. But meditation, mindfulness is a practice. It's not just something that you're just gonna, that's it, I'm doing the mindfulness meditation thing, my conversation problems will be solved. It doesn't work like that. That's something you have to cultivate, but it's definitely a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, and just thinking about that, the more that you say this, and the more I think back to conversations we've had with our members this week. One particular member does oil painting, and he will paint with oils to try and give him that space. So that's quite a meditative, mindful practice, a bit like, you know, those colouring books, you know, that if you're not an artistic, and this guy's a really talented artist, you could do that maybe as a practice if meditation is difficult for you, as it is for a lot of ADHDers, particularly if you're not medicated. But what I have found is that if I do miss a day of yoga, and I only do 10 minutes every morning, and that just helps me get into that space, I am much more reactive, and I'm much less able to create that space for myself. And you forget, don't you? We forget these things. We know these things. We know we have to eat, sleep, and do all these things to be as productive and as well, and to have the best life we possibly can. But we do forget. So I just want to put the emphasis on that, as you've said, Steph. your meditation, make sure your tank's full, and do the things, whether it's, you know, a mindful walk, getting outside, doing your yoga, so that you do have that space, because otherwise you just sucked in and you forget all your strategies for a proper conversation. And then you get really cross with yourself afterwards. So we do have to put these in place. But what I would also like to say is that having the boundaries in place, because you can think, I don't want this conversation to escalate as a kind of outcome, but no, I think you need to have a better outcome than that, and to have your boundaries at the very top of the list, not to be violated if it's going to be a challenging conversation. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, in theory, it's so different in practice, isn't it? We all we know that. It's one, yeah. It's really, it takes the whole ADHDers not doing what they know to a whole new level, because it's just physically, neurobiologically really difficult to overcome that RSD. Because boundaries, when you said boundaries, that just kind of, as soon as you said that, and it's true, we need to, I think that is a reason why too, we do kind of react so badly sometimes, because often boundaries are being breached when it comes to ADHDers and, you know, these kind of conversations, right? Particularly within the family, because ADHD runs so prevalent in family. So I had literally 2 clients this week, and both these 2 sessions were involved around communicating with family members and how literally not to, you know, hurt each other, because it's so difficult, particularly if you've got a parent, for instance, that's got ADHD that doesn't know they've got ADHD. And I see quite often a lot of ADHDers, particularly within the family, once they've got diagnosed, they're trying to communicate that to their family members to understand, and sometimes also to help the family member maybe see that they might have ADHD too, which doesn't go very well initially, particularly. But, you know, because ADHD is also, we like to share, we want to help. A lot of the time we're just trying to help when we share information, but we do sometimes come across as kind of maybe know-it-all or imposing our will. And so it defeats that outcome that we're looking for. So just this week, I was saying to a client, remember, hang on, what outcome are you looking for here? Because, you know, obviously kind of waiting to hear, well, actually, you know, I want it to be a good relationship. You know, I don't want it to end up in this. So to remember that you're trying to preserve the relationship. So there are things that you're going to need to adjust and modify if that is one of your outcomes, which if you're having a conversation with someone, usually, you know, hopefully it is to preserve relationship if it's within the family.
And I think because of our lack of planning and we do things on the hoof, we haven't kind of rehearsed what could be said in this conversation, what could go wrong potentially, in order to make sure, you know, it's less likely to go down that route. And I think because we just find ourselves in life doing stuff, reacting to stuff as it happens. And so I think if we do kind of remind ourselves and have those tools in place to say, you know, how do I want this relationship to improve? If this happens, if this conversation happens again, what will I do? Rather than just finding yourself in the flow of life without, and, you know, it going wrong again, repeating the same mistakes, is to actually invest a bit of time, I think, to the outcomes, as you've just said, Steph. I think that's really, really important, and something that I certainly don't do enough, but I'm starting to learn to do. And conversations are going much better, and you come to those conversations of boundary settings with a lot more confidence. And even though you could say exactly the same thing, if you have that inner confidence, the other person can somehow sniff it out. I don't know how. You could have the same body language, I don't know, say the same thing with the same tone, but somehow it's received differently if you've got that inner confidence that it's going to work, and that you're firm about this. I've noticed that.
No, you've really hit upon a big point there. And that kind of goes back, and why I'm always harping on about how important it is for ADHDers to know what they want, right? Because, I mean, there are some ADHDs that really know what they want. Yeah, it's very clear. But other ADHDs, a lot of us, we don't really know. We're very easygoing, maybe, or, you know, we'll just kind of go with the flow. And you often do see the boundaries breached with with that type of attitude, but particularly in a conversation, because you haven't even stepped back and thought what you want, right? So you know how that conversation is going to turn out, particularly if you are speaking to someone that does know what they want.
Exactly. And it's like you're in a boat and you're just being blown around, the sails are up, you don't know where you're going, you're not directing the sails. You need to have that direction in mind, and we forget that. We just put our tasks down, and because we get so behind on stuff, in the home or whatever, and fixated on stuff we haven't done, we forget to prioritize conversations, and how that in itself needs a bit of investment in and work in order to really enrich and improve those relationships, whether they're in the home, with friends, family, or in the workplace.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's such a skill, right? The art of communication. It's something that this stuff should get taught. This stuff should get taught at schools, but particularly for ADHDers, it's definitely a skill that it needs to be really kind of built, and we need to cultivate that skill. So it's definitely worthwhile investment, and that's why obviously it just won't be 1 week we're concentrating on communication at ADHD Unlocked. This will be we'll be continuing on the conversation on this, right? And
yeah. Sorry to interrupt. You see, I just thought I'd demo another ADHD communication challenge.
It's okay, Mish. I was expecting it anyway, and that's another kind of, so it's like, and just trying to put a point. I wasn't expecting it, but I was trying to illustrate just then that that's another thing. If you kind of know kind of what whoever you're speaking to, maybe what they're going to say, their kind of behaviors, or maybe they're going to tell you you're wrong, and you're used to them telling you you're wrong. Anticipate it, right? Because then when you go into that conversation, you're not going to be taken by surprise. You're going to be prepped for it. You're not going to let it kind of get you off track. Yeah. I just was trying to illustrate some kind of, that point.
When Michelle interrupts, I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I will try harder to invest in that side of my communication skills, but also that position of strength, use your body language beforehand, get your body into that kind of space so that you do feel more empowered, and you're just more likely for the conversation to go better. But we're very excited, Steph, aren't we? Because we are launching our members portal on September the 1st for people joining. So we're very excited. There's going to be a lot of changes. It's going to be a lot easier to access our information and find all our information in one place. So it's looking fantastic. So we're very excited.
And I have to, and credit where credit's due to that one, I have to special thanks to my husband Gavin, who has literally spent the last couple of days getting up to speed with the plugin for WordPress for this, and has done an incredible job. And we're so grateful. And I think when our members get to see this, and once they start using it, they too will be incredibly grateful to Gavin. One of our members has just said, members portal ? Oh yes, and it's awesome, guys. Like the best function of this, I think, the portal, is that when you go in there, it shows you the event that's coming up, and you can literally just click, and then you are in it. So awesome. And I'm sure, so thank you, our existing members, for bearing with us. But we're making it worth your while. Don't worry.
Yeah, so this will be on the website. It'll be a special members area for accessing, PDF downloads, videos, resources, PowerPoint presentations, all sorts of articles that you can just access at any time, sorted by topic area. So very, very exciting. So thank you so much, Gavin. You're an absolute superstar for doing this. And next week, we're looking at something that we're not great at cultivating. Well, sometimes we do it for a couple of weeks and then we forget. And that is creating good habits and knocking out bad habits. So we're looking at the wide topic of embedding good habits and getting rid of bad habits next week. So habits, which is very exciting. And there's a lot of really good science and stuff that's related to ADHD particularly that we can look at next week. So so communication let me down, as the Spandau Ballet song says, but if we employ some of these tactics, it will let us down less. Steph, is that what our message is for communication generally?
Right. And to help everyone, I'll be creating, so in the members group, I'll be creating a checklist, guys, so that you've got a handy, like kind of card you can keep handy with you, kind of maybe put it up where you can see it every day, okay? We need these visual kind of prompts. So there'll be a checklist for our members that will be available over the weekend.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you, Steph, and thank you everybody for joining us. And we will post the video so that if you missed it as live, you can catch up at any time. And we'll see you next week. But have a wonderful weekend, and I hope the wind and the rain stays away from you, and that you stay well and safe and happy. And don't forget to fill your tank. And we will see you next week. So thank you for tuning in, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.